that means that they trap air inside them and take ages to sink. Oh, dropped them. Hello everyone, so today I'm going to be showing you how I go about preparing botanicals for use in aquariums. I'm going to be adding some botanicals to this scape over here and taking it from a normal planted aquascape to a botanical planted aquascape. Something I haven't really tried before, but I really think it's going to be cool. And like I said in my previous video, I do want to keep a Betta imbellis in this tank, and they do like a lot of low pH and botanicals in their environment. So that's the plan. I'm going to talk you through how to prepare botanicals, and then we're going to see how it looks with them added in. It may look terrible and I may take them out again, but it's a great chance for me to share the best practice, in my opinion, on how to get them ready for use. So my channel has grown a bit since I posted my last video about botanicals, so I just wanted to go over a few things before I start preparing them, and that is where to source them from. So you have basically two options. You can buy them online or in your local shops, or you can collect them yourself. If you're going to be collecting them, you want to be collecting them from rural areas where you have permission to collect, where you know there hasn't been any pesticides or fertilizers or other chemicals used in the area. You want to collect freshly fallen leaves where possible. You do not want to collect them straight from the tree, because they're going to still have some sugars and things like that stored up in those leaves, which are going to be released into your aquarium. So yeah, freshly fallen brown leaves in nice clean environments are the best place to look. I would try and avoid any leaves that have been fallen on or close to main paths, because a lot of dogs will be walked along there potentially, and you don't really want to be picking that up because you don't know what's on them. That'll be my go-to. Once you bring them home, ideally you want to be collecting them when it's nice and dry, so pick a nice sunny day in autumn, winter, and then therefore you can bring them back, just quickly dry them off in a sort of warmish room, and then you can pack them away for storage until you want to use them. I store mine in boxes, so here's my box of oak leaves. I've already moved my box of beech into the kitchen, ready for use in a second, but I store them in boxes to make sure that they stay nice and dry, because I am keeping them in the fish room at the moment. I don't have anywhere else to store them, and I don't want them to get all humid and get covered in molds and funguses and stuff like that. Ideally, you'd want to keep them in a dry, dark, sealed container probably, but this is the best that I have got at the moment. If you're going to be ordering them online, pick yourself a retailer that uses them themselves. They're going to be able to help you a lot better with advice. You know that they've tried these products out and they haven't just imported them and then sold them on without checking that they are fit for purpose. So yeah, do you look into them, have a conversation with the retailer. You'll quickly find out if they actually know what they're talking about, and support these sorts of companies that put a lot of effort in to educate and to provide really good botanicals. Obviously, my go-to is Blackwood's UK. They've supported me before in some of my tanks, so they're the ones I would recommend, but I'm sure there are plenty of other ones out there, and obviously for those of you that aren't in the UK, you probably want to look elsewhere. So that's just a quick overview of botanicals and where to source them from and how to store them. I'd always, even if you're buying them in, store them in sealed containers in dry environments if possible. I can't, because I get told off if I put them in the house. So let's go into my kitchen and we'll start preparing these botanicals. And yeah, that's about it really. First step is picking out your botanicals and giving them a good rinse. So I've got what I'm going to use here, and I've got a saucepan which I'm going to be boiling them in a second. So first things first is I've got some beech seed pods or seed husk, whatever you want to call them. These are locally collected from the woods near me, and I'm going to use these. When they get boiled up, they close up and like they would be when they are still on the tree with a seed inside, and that means that they trap air inside them and take ages to sink. Oh, dropped them. So they take ages to sink. So what I'm actually going to do, because in the wild these get broken up a lot anyway, I'm going to snap off some of the sides so they don't ever fully close. This way it looks more natural and it'll help them sink as well. I'm just going to use some of these. So you never get perfect botanicals in the wild, so why should they be perfect in the aquarium? So that's a few of those. I'm going to combine that with a good handful of beech leaves. So ideally want some of the smaller ones, but any bigger ones can go into other tanks. May as well prepare lots in one go. Get a handful of those, add them to the mix. That's the beech done. Now I've got some more tropical style botanicals. I can't remember what these are called, but I'll put it in the comments. Or not in the comments, overlay it on the video, that's what I mean to say. Now again, I want some more smaller ones of these, so let's add some of these. They're a really nice little shape. Add different texture to the aquarium, so I'll just add a few of these smaller ones. And I'll use the bigger ones for a different tank. So pop the big ones back in. And again, I've got some more seed pods here. Can't remember the name of these either, but I will overlay that as well. I'll just take a couple of these smaller ones again. I'm not sure I'll actually use these, but they look really cool, so let's give it a try. And if not, they can go into a different tank. I've had these sat for a long time. Some of these I ordered from Blackwater UK, and some of them actually came from George Farmer, who didn't ever get around to using them when he got them from Tannin Aquatics. So these will go in. And there's a nice little story of when I went to Cambridge with these guys. So let's use those. So yeah, there is my mix of botanicals in the saucepan. Let's give them a quick rinse and then boil them. That is a quick rinse done. I'm now going to fill it back up and get it boiled. I've actually got some water that I just had coffee with in the kettle, so I use that to save boiling and save energy for so long. No point wasting it. And then just top it off with some extra water. They're all pretty much covered. Lid goes on. So just got to turn the botanicals on, and now what I will do. So I'm just going to wait for it to boil, and then once it's started boiling, I'm going to leave it a few minutes just to make sure that all of those surface contaminants are off of the botanicals and in the water. It'll also sterilise them nicely as well. I'm then going to pour all of that water away. It's going to be full of tannins, but it's also going to be full of all the stuff that I'm trying to get rid of with this boiling. So once I've poured that away, I'll add fresh water from the tap back into the saucepan and bring it to boil again. The second amount of water I will probably use in my aquariums. I'll use it as a concentrated tannin solution. The first set is worthless to me. I don't want to risk it. So that's why I separate it. If you're happy to pour away all of the water, you don't need to pour it out after a few minutes. Just leave it for a good 10 minutes to boil, and then pour all of that away and just use your botanicals. People do not prepare the botanicals like this. People will just soak them for a little bit. People might just put dry leaves straight into their aquarium and let them sink naturally. If you're confident and happy that they're collected and don't have any contaminants on them, that's perfectly fine to do. A quick rinse and pop them in. But personally, I don't want to risk it. My fish are very precious to me, and I do not want to cause any problems to them. And I'd rather not quite have such a concentrated amount of tannins released, and make sure the fish are going to be happy and healthy. That's what I do. I'm going to leave these here, pop the botanicals back on the shelf, and I'll be back to you in a bit. So, now it's time to check to see if it's boiling yet. Nice lot of steam. It's just starting to tickle over, so I'll give it a minute, and then we'll pour it out and start again. Some people absolutely love the smell of botanicals boiling. Some people absolutely hate it. So have a go, see if you hate it. If you do, open the windows and leave the house. But yeah, to me, I think it smells really nice and earthy. I really like the smell, and it fills the house with a lovely sort of aroma, but some people don't like it. Other thing to point out is this pot is just for botanicals. Don't ever use a cooking pot. for boiling botanicals. One, you won't be very popular with the rest of the people in your house, and two, it's probably not very sanitary. So. And there we go, it's nice and boiling now. So time to pour this away. Into the sink. And go from there. Now I like to just use the saucepan to stop any of the botanicals falling out while I pour off the water. And fill it back up. Right, that's back on to boil, and now we just leave it for a bit. Some of the sea pods will take a long time for it to get fully saturated and sink into the aquarium, so I'm going to give it at least 10 minutes on boiling before I move them into, well, take them off the heat. I'll let them cool fully down before I use them at all. Sometimes I will leave them in water overnight as well, just to make sure they are all fully saturated before putting them into the aquarium. I might not do that today because I'm obviously creating a video and I want to get this out to you all, so we'll see. I'll just definitely make sure that they have cooled down so I don't put any boiling leaves into the tank and kill all the fish. Yeah, leave that there and then I'll come back and show you the final product. So the botanicals have now cooled down and I've got them in the fish room here, looking really nice and brown. So it's time to add some into this tank and see how it looks. So the botanicals are now in, obviously there's not much tint left yet, but I will wait and see how much gets released by the botanicals in there. I can always add some of the concentrated boiled water that I have kept aside. I actually think it's looking quite nice. It's a bit different to the really clear sand foreground with the litter of botanicals, and as they start to degrade slightly, I think it will become less of a stark contrast. It does make the plants pop a lot more, I think. So yeah, we'll see how it goes over in the next few weeks and how I like it. And I might remove them, but so far I think it looks okay. I'm just a bit worried that the dwarf sage will be shaded a bit too much, but obviously in the wild that's exactly what will happen, so it should be fine. Let me know, did you prefer it before botanicals are added or now with them in there? Obviously it's not complete yet, the plants still have some growing to do and the water doesn't have much of a tint. But yeah, I'm really liking it. I think there's plenty of sort of areas for a Betta to rest on and hide. It's not going to be a long thin fancy Betta, so obviously the end of the twigs might be a bit too sharp for a long thin. They might get snagged and cause some tears, but I'm hoping in this layout they should be absolutely fine. Can't really see the dragonstone now, but I kind of picked dragonstone because it had the right colours and textures to blend quite subtly into the botanicals, rather than a really obvious light or a grey stone. So before I started filming today, I did ask you all on YouTube and on Instagram what you'd like to learn from this video. And now I covered some of them about like storage and collection, but I didn't cover everything. So I just wanted to take a moment at the end of this video just to cover any of those questions that I have missed off. And now the first one that I remember is how to get the red colour to your tint. And now that's something I tried to do for this tank, for the licorice guam tank next to me. It's faded over time just with water changes and not replenishing the botanicals that I use. But initially I got a really good cover by using Texas live oak leaves, a few locally sourced twigs and some cocoa fibres. I can put a link to the cocoa fibres in the description for you all. I think that's the key one. That's the one that both I sort of spoke to James at Blackwater UK about what he'd recommend for that reddish colour, and he said that is the product to go for. So it definitely worked for me, so I give that one a try if you can get your hands on it. Someone else asked about whether botanicals would decay over time in storage and how long you could store them for. And realistically, you want to use them quite fresh. You don't want to keep them for too long. But as long as they stay dry and cool, you shouldn't really get any decomposition happening. Obviously, it will happen if they are stored improperly and they get wet, and those sorts of molds and stuff can grow. Especially also if you have, I did have a box with some wood lice in, and they started eating away at some of the leaves because that's what they feed on. So yeah, if you store them properly, they should last a long time, but incorrect storage can lead to problems. Something else that was asked was, would boiling the botanicals remove all of the tannins that are going to be released into your aquarium? And the answer is definitely a no. You will still get a lot of tannins released after a boil, but you will not get as much. Some is released during boiling, and that's just part of it. If you're worried about losing all those tannins from the leaves, then you could always add in a concentrated bottled solution of sort of black water extract, or use the sort of botanical tea bags that some companies do to add the tea back in. The reality is, as long as if you're really going down the botanical method route and having a real thick layer of botanicals at the bottom, the amount of sort of tannins that you're going to lose through boiling is minimal, and you'll still get a really good colour to your tanks. I get really nice brown water, and I boil all of my botanicals. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much. If you are concerned, there are other ways, rather than skipping the boiling step, that you can add the colour back into your tanks. I also had a few people ask, what leaves can you use? And the reality is, pretty much any leaf could be safe. No one has got round to trying all of them. So all I'd say is prepare some, like you would normally, and pop them in a small container of water with maybe some pest snails or something like that you're not too worried about, and see if there's anything bad in those leaves. Generally speaking, if it's toxic to fish or shrimp, then it's probably going to be toxic to snails as well, especially because they're going to feed on it. So that would be my tip for trying out new botanicals that you're not sure on. But generally my go-to is, like I said in the earlier in the video, oak, beech and magnolia, the locally collected sort of ones in the UK. I'm pretty sure most fruit trees like apple and cherry are also safe, so you could give those a try as well. Generally speaking, people steer clear of the pine tree needles and things like that, and any plant that is known to be toxic would be a good one to avoid. And now finally, just a general one about the benefits and disadvantages of using botanicals in an aquarium. And now, effectively, the disadvantages are the appearance if you don't like the appearance of botanicals in your aquarium. They break down, they foster bacteria and biofilms and algae, and they create a bit of a mess. And now that is natural and beautiful if you can appreciate it, but I know not everyone can. They also can clog up your filters. If you're running some fine foams or anything like that, as the leaves break down, they do make a bit of a mess. That gets taken into your filter and clogs up all of those sponges. So I run a lot of my tanks without any sponges, and if I do, they're normally quite coarse. Otherwise, you just got to get in there and maintain it a lot, and you will notice those filters get real gross real quick. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye on. The advantages are it provides a refuge for microorganisms, a refuge for the actual fish, it provides spawning sites and enrichment to your animals. It creates a more natural ecosystem that should promote natural behaviours. You'll see fish pecking at them like you would on sort of submerged wood. They do it so much more when there's a whole tank is full of sort of botanicals. Obviously the colour of the water is great. I love that as well, the overall appearance. But that's personal. Everyone's going to have their own sort of list for the advantages and disadvantages of them. If you want more of that, let me know in the comments and I can do a full video on the benefits and drawbacks of botanicals. But yeah, other than that, I think that's me done for today.